Good morning, everyone. Sabah al-khair. Assalamu alaikum. If you don't mind, let me speak very quickly in English, and then we can have the discussion if you would like English, French, Arabic, Spanish, that's okay. So basically, what are we talking about today? It's a big topic, a lot of words, but basically nothing really is coming as new today. The main thing that we are trying really to deliver today is to understand what is going on around us, to ask ourselves what is really the new role of government in a new economy, an economy that is digital, completely digital, that we are part of it, if we want or we don't want. If we are really in, we are included. If we are out, we are completely excluded from this global economy. This is not about economics 101. It's not about digital government. It's about mixing both of them together. So very quickly, what we will talk about today is that we'll talk about the global trends quickly, briefly, and to the point with some numbers to know exactly what is the size that we are talking about of this economy. The second thing is that is there any foundation that we can really start the discussion from, that you start the discussion from? What are the elements of the foundation? So we need to define what are these foundational elements for building the digital economy and what is the role of government there. And then moving very quickly to what is really the new trend of government. I'm sure you already know what came from the UAE, very advanced with the announcement of His Highness for a new ministry of possibilities. This is something that, let's question it. Is this something that is mainstream or something completely different than what we are expecting from the next government worldwide? And then finally, we'll talk about, we'll stop 2 minutes here and there with a few examples that some countries that took the journey, and conclude with what I want you to take out of this into the discussion that we will have. So I hope that we finish all of this in 20, 25 minutes maximum. Okay? Ready? Let's do it. So basically, we are talking about a new economy today, and there are plenty of literature that is talking about this economy. But what is the size of this economy that we are talking about, and what exactly the definition of this economy? First of all, we are talking here about basically by 2025, 25% of the whole GDP of the whole economy of the world. Can you imagine what we are talking about in terms of size? And this is just came from scratch, which means that it has been stretched from 3% in a decade ago to 25% in almost 7 or 6 years from now. And that's huge. So what happened? Why we are talking really about this digital economy? Basically because we used to, until recently, in fact, until 2015, we were talking about the digital sector, the ICT sector. And always all the measurement were about measuring the size of ICT within the GDP. And usually, if we are lucky, we'll have from 3 to 8%. That's the normal size of the ICT sector. I'm talking here about telecommunication, which was the biggest source of funds and contributor, the services economy related to or enabled by ICT, and then the third piece, which was electronics, all the electronics and the manufacturing related to the IT sector. This is completely shifting with the blurring or the harnessing of emerging technology, where everything right now is we have a digital component embedded into it. We started with the phone, but this is a long time ago. Although it is maybe 12, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but things completely different. We are surrounded by digital right now. And this made, let's say, the portion of digital a little bit bigger and bigger to right now. We are expecting maybe 25% of the global economy to be a digital economy, but by 2050, it will be 100%. So we are running to understand more for the tech people that would like really to have a focus on the technology itself, the size of growth of the normal technology. There, the software technology and others are sticking into 3% and will not grow. However, the adoption rate and in the same time the growth of the economic growth of the harnessing emerging technology, and we are talking here about anything that is data-driven, IoT, AI, blockchain, and other, edge computing, and so look at this, it's double digit and it's continuing. That's just the start. Okay, that's high level, just to understand what is surrounding us. Now let's go one step down a little bit to understand what's going on. Most of us right now will talk about digital government. This is where our focus is. But we cannot talk anymore about digital government without understanding what is going on around us. And that's the beauty of connecting digital government to digital economy. So digital government is really about the prime role is definitely to deliver efficient and effective services to citizens and to businesses. But in the same time, it has another role right now. It's bringing more transparency within the system. It's really enabling innovation within the different sector of the economy. It is growing through enabling legislation, the other part of the economy. And in the same time, it has the prime role on focusing on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals based on what came recently from the different experience of different countries. And after the World Bank looked at what is really the OECD countries, emerging markets, developing countries, developed countries, edge countries on the frontier, we came with 5 critical ones. So the focus right now is really about making sure in our discussion, at the end of our discussion, you understand what will be the new role of digital government linked to the fundamentals that needs to be there, and in the same time make sure that you deliver on not just a piece of the puzzle, but in the same time on the main topics here. Unless you understand that you are an effective member of a team that is delivering or helping to create jobs, making sure that the whole country is competitive, you are not really understanding the technicality of how important the team is of digital government. So what are the foundational piece? But before that, maybe we talk about the government itself. So this is very familiar to you. In UAE is much more advanced than any other countries when we are talking about the transformation that happened during the last 10 years of taking, let's say, the way government is delivering its services to the next level. So this is the normal cycle of going everywhere. And by the way, you have to really see what's going on around in the region or even in the bigger perspective. There are 60% or more of the countries right now, still the citizen or the business are running around in order really to have different point of proving their identity, making sure that there are still paperwork that is going through the process, not mainstreaming the workflows are there. And at the end of the day, there is a lot of anger and not really a satisfied client, I would say. So now it's still, you are in the middle here. It's really human-centered, user-centered, citizen-centered. It's very, very familiar to you, the term. And we are trying really to deliver not only about services to citizens and businesses, but also to play a different role, to play a catalyzer for the whole government within the system, innovating into the systems, trying really to have a different role to show trust between the government or foster trust between the government and its citizen, and at the same time pooling a lot of data that will allow really this government to be data-driven insights that are coming in order really to have better performance. Not just the performance system, but on a real time. I'm glad that Mohammed is here, so we can really rely on his data in order really to feed us from the federal agency. So with this understanding of the shift that already happened in UAE, what are the fundamentals that can accelerate, let's say, the changes here? There are 5 things that we are talking about. And maybe it will sound familiar to you because we always talk about them even without identifying them as the 5 pillars of the World Bank for the digital economy. One is that it is always about skills and talent. The more pool of talent and access to the pool of talent, the channels that you have to the pool of talents, this is really a fundamental element that needs to be had. And then it's an economy of platforms. Please be sure that we are not talking here about the digital government as a platform only, but to enable the private sector platform. Careem, Uber, Jumia, Aramex, that is starting really to be into platforms. So private sector platforms are really the ones that are coming. And I'm sure that you already heard about Link & Co., which will revolutionize how we are owning cars. Basically, you don't have to buy a car anymore. It will be a Netflix subscription for a car, which is coming by next year. So you will see tons of platforms that are coming. So please think about digital platforms are more than the digital government platform. And then very quickly, it needs digital transaction all the time, not just in the payment that is included within the government services, but across. So we are moving toward a cashless economy, which the push that is being taken in the country here. All of this is coming with a solid, affordable, and speedy broadband. That's where we are talking about. This is the digital infrastructure that we are looking at. So it's really, you should have a lot of pride that UAE has been ranked second in terms of the digital infrastructure index recently. So this is by itself is really something great. So what is next? What is next is really the data infrastructure, the data depository that we are really needs to have a look on it, the way we are managing our broadband, including the data infrastructure that will come on board. Not relying only on commercial, but really how to have a more holistic perspective about the infrastructure strategy that the country or any country needs to adopt. And finally, we are talking about the entrepreneurship ecosystem, which started already to get its fruits greatly. But it's not enough, which means that it is usually there are two things that we are measuring entrepreneurship and innovation. There are the index about the number of startups that are graduated from the ecosystem, and the second piece, which is basically the amount of funding that is available. That's not enough if I would like really to go further. I really need to look at the ecosystem, and the ecosystem has R&D. And this is why academia is so important in order really to be into the equation, in addition to what will be the loop that is coming from the pool of talent that is coming in order really to push for ecosystem. And this is how you are building, let's say, the application and the usage scenarios on it. It's very theoretical, but it's important that you understand the big picture here. Because unless you understand the elements, you cannot really understand why we are moving towards the next step and the following step and the other steps. So that's key here. But what is really missing usually in any push for the foundational element is the component about the policy reforms. The policy reforms that are dictating the way we are going further. For example, some of the countries, they are adopting a very soft regulatory approach toward data. Others are really having a hard regulatory approach. We are seeing EU is very firm about its data governance policy, while we are seeing more within the emerging market, including Malaysia, for example, are looking at more relaxed type of data. And this is where, let's say, the balance is needed so you can really foster innovation in between both of them. So with this, let's jump into a focus on digital government a little bit. We already, this is where we were talking about the foundational element, how we are playing with it. There is a big role to the government, and there is a big role to the private sector that needs to happen. And that's the new role of government, is to deliver the services without you feel it. You don't have to show that you are here in order really to deliver it. No, you need to be invisible. What I mean by invisible is really in order really to virtually reorganize, restructure the way you are working. It's not invisible, which means that you don't see the government. You are here. You really need to be here. But the term is used in order to reflect that there is a virtual restructure of the way of delivery. That we need to take some examples afterward in order really to deliver on this. But it has to be an ecosystem. You cannot really, as a digital government, it's not e-government. It's not just by pulling AI and drive it through data that you are really having a successful digital government. No, you have the digital government when you are really aware of all the elements, that you have a say in them, that you are influencing the change and reforming of the policy that is enabling or hindering what you are doing, and at the same time, you know how to play it all together with the private sector, because you are not alone. And that's the GovTech approach, by the way, that the World Bank was referring to. So, with this, let me jump to a few illustrative cases. So, okay, fine, another time we'll talk about Estonia. Yes, we will talk about Estonia again, because they are really great. What they did is fantastic. But I'm not really bringing them today in order really to talk about the different services that they are providing. And basically, what I really need to talk about is two things. One is that all started with single authentication, which means one-time authentication. It's really about starting with ID, which the country has. But it's always starting here. And the second thing, it's a journey of 20 years. Don't think that this is coming just yesterday. It took time in order really to evolve. It took really time. They started from scratch completely, but there was no legacy. And that's, I'm free. There's nothing, no systems that are really taking me into the one direction while I would like to explore other directions. They are not really afraid of exploring. So there is the mindset of experimentation. And it is a mindset that is rewarded. And that's the most important about it here. They are the one that already started with New Zealand, the proactive services. So that's the points that I would like to talk here very quickly from a high level before going into depth within our discussion. But it's not the lack of deep dive technology-enabled services. That's not the case. And by the way, right now, almost 50% of all the applications coming on the X road of Estonia are really coming from private sector. And that's the mix that we are seeing, the blurring lines that is coming through. So, again, different model where Malaysia, you know that, from the 70s they were really pushing hard in order really to play a role and have a great footprint on the digital, I would say the part of the ICT economy, ICT sector within the economy as a whole. It started all with the transistor. Remember the transistor? Yeah, so radios and most of them were the Sony, the high quality Sony radio. Oh my God, I'm so old. I feel like gray hair here. But all happened during the 70s where the head of Intel visited Malaysia, and they started really to focus on the sector of manufacturing, electronics manufacturing, which worked great until the big depression of the 2007. Things went down, manufacturing went down, the global economy weren't really consuming electronics anymore, which they needed really to shift. The digital government at the time were supporting, let's say, the manufacturing, the electronic manufacturing. It shifted towards a different focus, which is e-commerce. So prioritizing private platforms and make sure that the digital government is enabling such kind of e-commerce platforms to come. Do you know that Alibaba, for example, most of their logistic operation is managed from Malaysia and delivered from Malaysia? Just to give you some numbers here, we're talking here about a phenomenal 18% last year of GDP. The digital economy is 18%. 18%. This is huge as a percentage. And it is going towards the 20s, more and more. And the potential is even bigger. The potential of digital economy that is focusing because of the, let's say, the accelerator of their focus. Their focus on e-commerce is bringing, let's say, the potential. This is, by the way, the spending of a person. So if I raise the spending, I can go even higher within the size of the economy, the digital economy. So the potential to grow is huge. So watch this country. But again, I'm bringing just two countries into the equation here, which is one who bet on the digital government with the government as a kind of a catalyzer, and and the one that is going through it, and the other one is really betting on the private sector and the private platforms where the government is really enabling them in order to succeed. So what in general, what are the fundamentals here? Bringing what we started with about the elements and the design of today's data-driven government, how it is. The design is very simple, is that it has to be around 4 components. Once you have the foundational elements already established, the 5 foundational elements that we talked about, in addition to the reform, the policy reform and regulatory reform. So it's anyone that is touching anything needs to touch it once. That's a principle, a design principle. You cannot really do it again and again, and let's have a committee to see it in different perspective. Let's solve it. Maybe we can do it much better. Launch it, and then we'll see what's going on. The second one is no duplicated data, no redundancy. Central registry. And then finally, it's really the ownership is clear. And this is where most of the countries right now are struggling. Who is owning the data? Federal or state? Are we talking about citizen or agencies? Are we talking about open common pool or it is really data sets, selective data sets that will be open? This is where the next layer of innovation will be coming. And finally, let me give you at least 4 trends that we are seeing in terms of application and services, and it will sound very familiar to you. Is that predictive services, as a citizen, I don't have to wait. I'm glad that we have a kit here. Can you show me, Shaitan, this kit? Anyone who already had a baby recently? You received it before even telling anyone that you had a baby, correct? So that's an example of predictive, automated, proactive way of the government in order really to go and deliver the service to you by really going after the big stops in your journey, life journey, basically, and trying really to replicate this. There is another service that happened here in UAE, but Estonia is starting with 5 services. New Zealand is starting with also 6 services. Singapore has already pushed for about 7 services right now. So basically, once you have the data, so the government needs to harness the data in a way that is really pushing the services automatically to you, without even asking for a birth certificate, a license, a deed that is confirming your ownership, and so on. So those are really the trends right now, and we'll see it more and more. We heard about the UK, who started the government as a platform, and basically the most familiar application based on this, because it's one platform, so you push e-payment across the government, which we are seeing more and more. This is taking place in most of the government across the world. However, it doesn't have to stop here. You really need to treat the government as the platform for more other services. And the blockchain is really helping enormously here to push more and more services around. Driven by insight, it's not just about the leadership. This is the trend right now is about how citizens are really contributing and feeding into the budget. Mexico, Australia, Denmark, Sweden. No budget is approved unless there is not public hearing. In fact, it's a digital feed that are coming. And the readiness of the citizen is happening also through the platform of the government. And that's where you can have a buy-in and more trust very quickly. And then also very familiar to you is that you really need to reform procurement from scratch. And what we mean by the procurement as a driver for innovation is that procurement needs to happen in modules, small modules, not really big procurement. The more you have smaller modules, you can introduce more actors, you can introduce more, let's say, products even within the government in order to experiment more and more. Once you have a platform, you have the data that will allow you in order to automate and predict, and you have the feedback from the government, automatically you will require and procure what you really need, not what is usually the one. And very much those four has been reflected a little bit in the new vision that we are seeing. So it's very much into the global trend right now. So in order to, to close, it's definitely you really need visionary leadership that is taking you to the next level. I would select three things that we need to debate after I stop in 1 minute. One is we talked about the proactive services. So we need to come with more of these services, more and more. And we ask ourselves if we do have the available data. If we do have it, that's fine. If we don't have it, so let's make sure that what are the legislation that needs to be changed, what are the policies that needs to be changed in order really to make it available and open to predict the next gen of services. Most of the innovation right now is not about the application. Definitely this is AI, as you know, in terms of technology, but I'm talking here about the real innovation where people are struggling is really about the regulation, which means that changing your regulation quicker than the technology pace. Are you allowing more than just sandboxes where you can experiment your data sets into them? Are you allowing, let's say, the whole country to adopt a way of fostering the use of driverless cars? But how about the industry will come against me, or the petrol stations will come against me? No, so we really need to come with a mission-driven approach. Like, for example, how I can really regain my space within the cities for citizens, instead of talking about the driverless car. So take the shift and see what will happen if this is coming, and try really to predict what type of regulation will enable it. And finally, focus. When President Kennedy in the US wanted really to go and push everyone to into the fighting the Cold War, they used the space in order really to be the enabler factor, or the catalyzer factor, and came with a moonshot that our aim as a nation will be in order to put a man on the moon in 10 years. We need a digital moonshot. if country would like to succeed, it needs a digital moonshot. It needs to be focused on specific areas, not sectors. The sectors are part of the digital economy. But what exactly are you talking about? Are you innovating into blowing up completely your regulation, trying really to open up your data completely, harnessing it to a level that is you are using all the emerging technology to make added value 10x over it? That's what needs to happen in terms of a digital moonshot. I hope it wasn't boring. Okay, thank you so much.